Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX with me, Devika Devan. If there was any hope that the war between the US and Iran was heading toward a permanent peace, that hope has, viewers, died today. Speaking from the sidelines of the NATO summit in Ankara, President Donald Trump has officially declared that the hard-fought interim ceasefire deal with Iran is quote-unquote over. Sitting next to NATO leaders, Trump didn't hold back, calling Iran's leadership scum and liars, and stating flatly that continuing to negotiate with them is a total waste of time. So what triggered this sudden, catastrophic collapse? It all went down in the last 48 hours inside the vital Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Revolutionary Guard launched targeted projectile and drone attacks on 3 commercial tankers, including a Qatari liquefied natural gas carrier and a Saudi oil tanker. These ships were traveling on an Oman-coordinated southern corridor bypassing Iran's routes. Iranian state TV essentially admitted to the strikes, claiming the ships ignored their warnings. The immediate fallout was a stunning, massive military escalation. The US military unleashed what they called a powerful retaliatory strike, pounding over 80 targets inside southern Iran. US Central Command says they heavily degraded Iran's coastal radar sites, air defenses, and obliterated 60 Revolutionary Guard fast attack ports. Simultaneously, the US Treasury Department completely revoked the temporary oil sanction waivers that have kept Iran's economy on life support. Iran's response was instant and dangerously broad. Tehran retaliated by launching 85 drone and missile strikes targeting bases hosting US forces, but they didn't just hit US assets, they targeted locations across Kuwait and Bahrain, triggering air defense sirens in those Gulf nations and violently widening the scope of this war. The reaction from the global markets was also instantaneous. Global oil and natural gas prices have spiked by more than 5% within hours of Trump's declaration, threatening a massive new wave of global inflation. Meanwhile, at the NATO summit, Europe is trying to figure out how to react. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte strongly defended Washington, calling the US strikes absolutely necessary to protect international shipping. But behind the scenes, there is massive friction. Trump has publicly slammed European allies for refusing to let the US use their air bases for bombing runs, even threatening to cut off trade with Spain over defense spending. So where do the US and Iran go from here? The 60-day window for a permanent peace deal under the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding is completely disintegrated. President Trump has signaled that the US is moving away from the diplomatic table, warning that the US will either get a total deal on its own terms or, in his words, finish the job. What the world needs to worry about tonight is a completely uncontained multi-country conflict. Iran is currently concluding the multi-day funeral of its slain Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, where millions have been chanting for vengeance. With the diplomatic guardrails now completely gone, a vital global energy choke point on fire, and regional neighbors like Kuwait and Bahrain dragged directly into the line of fire, the Middle East has just slid right back onto a full-scale war footing. But what does this truly mean? We take this conversation forward. Major Shashi Asthana with us on the broadcast, Ambassador Suresh Goyal, and Mr. Raymond Vickery, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joins us as well. Let me begin with some news coming in before I bring in our guests onto the broadcast. President Donald Trump has declared that the ceasefire with Iran is over, warning that the United States is set to strike Iran hard once again tonight. Speaking to reporters at the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey, the president said, and I quote, "I'll give them a little warning. We're going to hit them hard tonight." Listen in.
And, we hit them hard last night after they launched. They launched a couple of, you don't have to know about this, you got stuff on your mind, but they launched a couple of drones and one rocket, one missile, and at ships, because they were in the strait, which they have every right to be. And so we hit them very hard last night. Very, very hard. Probably hit them hard again tonight. I'll give them a little warning. We're going to hit them hard tonight. But we'll see how it all works out. No, I'm not happy with them. It's like, for instance, we'll have a meeting and we'll talk about the denuclearization of Iran, because that's what the war is. It's not a war. It's really
All right, Raymond Vickery, bringing you to the conversation here. Mr. Vickery, I want to understand from you. We've just heard Donald Trump saying that he's going to be attacking Iran once again tonight. In your assessment, where does one go from here?
Well, thanks for having me and allowing me to comment on this. It seems to me that this war of choice launched by President Trump has no strategy. It has no partners aside from Israel, and it has no principles upon which it's being founded. And without strategy, partners, and principles, defeat is certain. It cannot be the case that you will simply take a nation of 90 million people and bomb them into submission. That having been said, it is absolutely clear that one of the principles that must be upheld here is freedom of the seas, the opening of the Straits of Hormuz. And I think it is now time for other great democracies who have more strategic thinking, whether it be India, whether it be in Western Europe, Japan, Australia, and so forth, to step forward and try to impose upon these belligerents a strategy to wage peace and not war, a partnership which is broader than simply the United States of America and Israel, and principles upon which it can be settled. Without that, this will degenerate further into one of the endless wars which President Trump said that he was going to do away with when he was campaigning. This is not the way forward. President Trump is growingly unpopular here, and the war is completely unpopular. But given the present circumstances and the lack of leadership in the White House, it will be necessary not only for people within the United States, but people of goodwill across the international spectrum, and particularly the great democracies of the world like India, to step forward and try to impose some logic and some reasonableness upon this situation. Otherwise, it will continue to degenerate, and we have all seen what the end result is of continued degeneration. It's war, and it's a widespread war, and will not be just limited to the United States and in Western Asia.
All right, Mr. Vickery, thank you for joining us. Stay on with me because I'm bringing in more news as we speak. Of course, a major aspect now is the oil prices as well, viewers. Donald Trump has said that oil prices will raise a little as a result of the resumed attacks on Iran. Anytime we hit Iran, the price goes up a little bit by $2. The US president says that's the result of the US strikes on Iran over the last day. He agreed with the reporter who asked if renewed violence between the US and Iran might cause the price of oil to rise, insisting that the rise will be limited to $2. Let me quickly bring in, if I can, Major Shashi Asthana onto this aspect. Major Asthana, we had just thought in the past week, 10 days, sir, that there is finally some respite. News was coming in that the prices are finally beginning to go down. But with the resumed attacks, of course, the prices will rise once again. There's already been a 5% increase in the last 24 hours. How does the world now prepare itself? This is seeming to be a very long drawn war.
See, the prices will rise, there is no doubt about it. And earlier also, President Trump underestimated the consequences of what he did. And I totally agree with Mr. Vickery when he mentioned this is a war of choice. The war has been started by USA on the pretext of Netanyahu. And at that point of time, the Strait of Hormuz was open. So that's a statement of fact which nobody can deny. Now, the problem with President Trump is that he is getting into a midterm election. He withdrew from a deal which existed in 2015 and he withdrew in 2018. And that was talking about Iran not getting nuclear, and Strait of Hormuz was open at that point of time as well. Now, his problem is that if he enters the midterm election without anything more than what the previous deal gave, he is going to lose in any case. So he has a problem that Iran should give him something more than what JCPOA of 2015 gave. So he needs JCPOA plus, which he is not getting from Iran. That is his problem. The second problem is that perhaps the professionals did try and advise the so-called the decision makers in US who are not professionals. Unfortunately, they did tell them that what does the attack involve, and there is a terrain friction involved in the Strait of Hormuz, and the geography has a role to play, and this perhaps they did not calculate. Can you imagine, till date, not a large ship, not a single large ship has been able to enter Strait of Hormuz till date. You can keep having 11 aircraft carriers, but nothing can get inside because of the geography. The second issue which people don't understand is that if you strike 2 or 3 cargo ships, the crew gets so nervous, the insurance companies get so nervous that nobody tries to get out. So blocking Strait of Hormuz is just a matter of 1 or 2 strikes. But opening Strait of Hormuz means that you have to capture all the islands, 13 of them, and then only you can open and say confidently that I can open, which is beyond the capability of United States at this point of time.
Right.
So that is the problem. Now, even if, let's say hypothetically, what President Trump is saying, okay, we will bomb and we will finish the job and etc., etc. Now, you can bomb Iran, you will create casualties, you will destroy some infrastructure, no doubt about it. Iran also has some options. They can also activate Houthis. They can also talk about the Red Sea. They can also talk about the cables. So there are options both ways. So therefore, this is certainly not going in a sane direction by any stretch of imagination, because this escalation dynamics doesn't work in favor of the entire world. I agree with Mr. Raymond very clearly that I think the whole world has to say, because what Iran is doing is wrong. Strait of Hormuz is a natural waterway. It cannot be blocked by a country. So let that be very clear. So what is wrong is wrong. Okay. Whether it is A or B, both sides, the blockade is also wrong. US blockade was also incorrect for various reasons. But notwithstanding that, the problem is that this will have consequences. And
okay.
Iran
and as
is,
we speak,
you have
there
put
are
Iran to